I love this game, man. Marvel Contest of Champions. It's so good in so many ways, and Dungeons I wanted so bad. I was so excited when Dungeons finally got added to the game. Finally, a way that I could play with a buddy outside of the Alliance. Such a cool idea. I was really happy that Kabam added it. And Dungeons, they're almost awesome, but not quite. I mean, Legacy and I, we just finished what we believe is the world record run so far, at least, for this new special dungeon event that's currently live, where the deeper in the dungeons you go, the more buffs are added to each node, and instead of going up against two buffs for the nodes, we were going up against five buffs. So it was getting really tough. Each fight was super sketchy, and afterwards, after the run, Lagus and I were talking. We're like, dude, we should upload some of these fights separately, just by themselves, because they're really cool. And we started thinking about some of the fights, and we were like, oh, this fight should be uploaded. So should this fight, and this fight, and this fight, and this fight. There were so many examples of really cool, interesting fights that I think were really fun to not only fight, but to kind of watch somebody else fight as well. These are fights that you can't get anywhere else. You can't see these types of interactions in even the hardest, most difficult areas of the game, like Alliance Wars or the variant difficulty, or even like the Map 7 beta. There were certain things in these dungeons that were just totally unique to dungeons, and that's really cool. And I really enjoy dungeons, and I want them to be better. I want to feel good about playing dungeons. I want to feel like I'm spending my time the right way when I log in and think about playing dungeons. But there's just so many reasons that dungeons aren't good right now. And I don't want to be too negative about things here. I'm going to be pretty negative about it. It's going to be a pretty negative review overall of the current iteration of Dungeons. But I also want to be fair and say that I know Kabam has a pretty tight development window. They have an update that they get out every single month, right? And there are certain things that have to be in that monthly update, right? The new quest, there's new champions that get added every other week, right? They have a lot on their plates, and Dungeons, I'm sure, is something that is kind of on the back burners in terms of things that have to get updated each month. But there's a lot that can be improved here. So, I don't want to be too mean-spirited about these things, but like I said, it's going to be pretty negative. So let's start talking about some of the things that I would personally love to see changed, about the dungeons. First off, I feel like there's no actual reason to push deeply into the dungeons, right? I mean, they're called Infinity Dungeons, but it doesn't feel rewarding. It doesn't feel like there's any reason to actually push beyond the milestones themselves, which there are 18 of them they have to claim from this little teeny tiny window here, which is kind of funny. But once you actually get enough points to get all these milestones, there's just no real reason to keep playing. For today and the next couple of days, it's kind of a special feature where, there's some additional fragments thrown into the rewards, some Tier 2 Alpha, but it's such a small amount of Tier 2 Alpha that, we made it to Room 12, and I could probably pop open like one Map 6 crystal and get the same amount of Tier 2 Alpha, or if not more, out of that one Map 6 crystal versus all of the time and effort that went into this awesome dungeon run that I just did. And it just feels so lacking, Even if we're not talking about rewards, why is there no leaderboard for dungeons? I feel like of all the things to have a leaderboard in this game, dungeons is like the prime example of something that you want a leaderboard for, right? But instead, we go to the leaderboards, we have things like strongest team. I mean, no offense to anybody going for the top of the leaderboard of strongest team, but who cares about strongest team? Like, this means nothing, But going through the dungeons, seeing how far you can get and comparing yourself to other people, seeing how far they can get, like, that's really cool, man. I really enjoy that, and if we can, even if not that many people participate in it, even if there was just like this small rivalry that built up around like a few different groups of players that kind of are trying to one up each other. Like even that would be pretty cool. There'd be a little bit of a story to tell there for the people who kind of watch that type of thing, even if they don't want to participate in it. But we don't have that. There is no leaderboard for Dungeons. Like I said, there's no reason to actually push beyond the normal milestones themselves. And even talking about the rewards inside of the milestones themselves, they're pretty weak overall. We get the dungeon artifacts, and when we look at the dungeon crystals here, a lot of people really don't like that you can't really get one of these dungeon crystals for each round of the dungeons that come by, right? Dungeons, I think they last for about 2 weeks. Kabama stated in the past that they start up the dungeons around like the second half of the month. This way, when people are finished with the monthly event quest, it kind of gives them something to do to kind of hold themselves over until the next monthly event quest begins. But you can't get a fully formed dungeon crystal within those 2 weeks. And a lot of people really don't like this. Personally, I don't mind so much. That's not something that I really care about that much. The dungeon crystals, they give you a pretty decent chance at targeting a champion that you really want. We look at the regular 5-star crystal right now, it's like a 1% chance. If you want, let's say you want Corvus out of the 5-star crystal, right? You have like a 1% chance of pulling that dude, and the chances are going to go down over time. If he's in the featured crystal, you have, what is it, like a 5% chance, like a little bit under 5% chance or something like that. In a dungeon crystal, it's a 10% chance. And I know that that's still not super high odds to get the champion you want, but it's still better. And I don't necessarily mind that the dungeon artifacts themselves build up slowly, but the rewards that go alongside the dungeon artifacts need to be increased. I kind of compare it to the monthly event quest. If we take a look at the monthly event quest and we take a look at the rewards for Uncollected, like it's fine that going through Uncollected doesn't give you enough shards, enough 5-star shards to open up a 5-star crystal, or even if we compare it to a 6-star crystal, it takes a long time to build these things up, right? But you're getting so many other rewards along the way that it feels good. I don't know, the Uncollected difficulty, the rewards feel pretty good. I don't hear a lot of people complaining about the rewards. Sure, there's always going to be people complaining, but compared to dungeons, the rewards it's just not worth the time. It's not worth the effort. You're better off playing something like Arena, where you don't have to team up. You don't have to find somebody else to play with. You don't have to go through that extra step. You don't have to really pay attention to the fights. You don't have to think about which way to go. And if you make a mistake, then you have to kind of start over, you lose a bunch of points. Like it's just so much easier to play Arena, and I like that about Arena, actually. I like that it's a really easy game mode, really easy to get into. You can kind of pick it up for a few minutes while you're waiting for something, and then just kind of go back to it later. That's awesome. But Dungeons, we're kind of dedicating this block of time to, and getting worse rewards for it? It just feels really weird. In terms of what rewards could be there, I don't know exactly what would be the best to add to the dungeons, but just a few examples of ideas that could work. Right now, 5-star signature stones, they're really hard to come by, and since 5-star champions need 200 sig levels, it'd be nice to see some sig stones there. I'm trying to think of rewards that, if you don't want to participate in dungeons or you can't dedicate that kind of time, I don't want people to feel like they have to, otherwise they're going to fall behind. So something like signature stones, it's fun to get them, but at the same time, if you're missing out on them, it's not like, oh, now I can't even play the game because, this guy has plus 20 sig levels on his champion versus mine, right? It's not like that, right? So sig stones, I think, would be really good. Battle chips, I've already said it a million times in the past. Gold is fine for people who need gold, but why not just make it battle chips so that it feels like we can get some units out of spending our time here as well. There's only so much time in a day, and units are something that are pretty essential to this game. And I understand. I mean, maybe Kabam doesn't want to give too many ways to give units for free or something like that, because of course that is one of their biggest sources of revenue, is people spending money on units. But still, it means that, you know, it's just better to play Arena over this mode, right? If you have an hour to play the game, you should be spending that hour playing Arena versus playing Dungeons, even if you feel that Dungeons are more fun. And I don't think you should have to do that, right? I think you should be able to play either or, whichever you find more enjoyable, and still be able to get those units or the battle chips needed to cover your donations, to continue playing Alliance quests. It just feels like the whole game would work so much better together if you know, battle chips were included here instead of gold. There's other rewards that can be you know, added in here. Loyalty is something hard to come by. I could throw a little bit of loyalty in here or something like that. I don't know, just something more than what we're seeing here. And the little bit of tier 2 alpha was added for this little special event that is going on. That's that's not enough. It's really just feels like it doesn't even matter. So yeah, I'd like to see something like that. Some kind of really maybe out there, maybe a little too far out there of an idea is a lot of people are short on gold and ISO. Maybe if, let's say, we got new champions, we could take those new champions, throw them in the dungeons, and as we're going through the dungeons, they could level up, so it kind of replaces that that way of getting the gold and ISO. Just trying to think of what other games do when you have to, you know, when you're kind of grinding out, fighting different enemies. You know, instead of your account leveling up, maybe it could make your champions level up. Maybe that's a little bit too out there of an idea for Marvel Contest of Champions, but something that came to mind. Figured it's worth mentioning at least. You know, Kabam, they recently updated the rewards for these friendship bonuses. They're currently disabled right now. I guess there was an issue with the friendship bonuses, but they'll be back. The friendship bonuses, I feel like is actually a cool idea, but it's another one of those cool ideas that just wasn't really implemented the way that I would have liked to see it be implemented. I love the idea of leveling up in games, man. You could pretty much add a level up system in practically any game, and it makes it more enjoyable for me. You know, it's one of the reasons why I play Marvel Contest of Champions versus a standard fighter, where they just give you all the champions at the beginning of the game, and you know, that's it. And it's not as fun. I'd rather kind of start from that nothingness and just kind of make myself more and more powerful as time goes on, right? So leveling up with a buddy, that's a really cool idea, but it's kind of an empty, hollow leveling up type of system in its current form. You know, where you get a little bit of shards, of friendship crystal, something like that for leveling up, but the number itself is meaningless. I'd much rather see a level up system that actually matters, that actually makes us stronger when playing together. So let's say each time you level up with somebody, you just gain another kind of level of power, and these Kabam could go nuts with this level up system. There's so many different things that they could tweak. They could, you know, they can keep it something simple so that when you hit level 2, suddenly you just gain 1% attack and health, and each time you level up you can kind of gain something like that. Of course, only in the dungeons. It wouldn't carry over to something like Alliance Wars, nothing like that, but you know, it would just allow you to become stronger in the dungeons, make it a little bit more cool to go through the dungeons. They could do something like that affects attack and health. They could you know, break it down even into smaller increments where it's like, you know, if you level up, you're gaining, you know, all of your science champions now have a little bit of extra health or attack or crit damage or something. They could even do it on the champion level where, okay, you hit level 5 and your Colossus is now hitting 10% harder or something like that. And yeah, maybe that's too weak of a bonus. Maybe people wouldn't necessarily care about that, but it's just an idea. Hopefully you guys get what I'm talking about, where it would just be cool to have all these different bonuses, and then if there's an area where we can kind of see the bonuses that we have together, and it would just feel good, you know, actually leveling up that way and becoming stronger over time. So I feel like the level up system was kind of a cool idea, but in its current form, it strictly feels like a retention thing where it's just something for your buddy to be like, hey, come on, let's level up together. And I'm kind of just like, well, why? What do we get stronger? No? Oh, well then, who cares? So hopefully that idea makes sense. That's something that I would really like to see is the level up system actually have some type of meaning to it. The next thing I want to talk about is the overall time that is spent in the dungeons, and this is a little bit tough to talk about because Kabam's already iterated on this a few times. When dungeons were first introduced, I think it took about twice as long back then to get all of the milestones as it does today. So, they've already made several improvements there. But I still think it could be a little bit better. And maybe it's not always about just reducing the amount of time, but maybe making that time more enjoyable, making the whole process a little bit easier to go through, or more convenient to go through. I'm not saying the individual fights need to be easier, but for example, when you go into a dungeon and you're looking to clear the nodes for your partner, you have to click on each individual portrait, and there's not much of an animation, but the screen kind of shifts a little bit to show you the nodes, a list of nodes along the side of the screen, and you have to do that for all 4 of the different nodes. What I'd prefer to see is kind of the list of nodes without having to click on the profile picture. So you have the hidden profiles with the links going to the mini bosses, but the question mark profile picture, right? And kind of right above that question mark, but like attached to that like square itself, I would like to see just the names of the nodes. So it wouldn't tell you the full description, but if Duel was on that node, if you can clear Duel by taking out that enemy, then it should just say it like right above that profile picture's head, right? It should say Duel, Aggression, Regen, whatever nodes are there. It'd be nice to be able to see that. And then if you want to know more about them, if you're not familiar with a node based off of just the name of it by itself, then you can click on it and kind of learn more about it. It's kind of asking for a lot because, Kabam, they would have to, that would probably take a bit of work to actually get something like that to look good in game and show. But I really do feel like that would make the overall dungeon experience more enjoyable. It would reduce some of the kind of annoying parts of the time that we spend in the dungeons, just reduce the time a little bit overall, while still requiring us to actually go through the motions of taking out these enemies and stuff like that. Because there's only so much you can do as far as reducing the amount of enemies that you have to kill to shorten the time, right? I mean, I don't expect to get these rewards for free or anything like that, but just make that time a little bit more enjoyable. The other thing about like the amount of time that's spent in here is, I mean, I do like the idea of having to kind of dive deeper and deeper into this dungeon and things are getting more difficult and stuff like that. But I think more so than that, I do prefer kind of like a timer almost on things, and I think this makes more sense for a PvP game mode. And it kind of goes back to really just wanting a smaller scale PvP game mode. It doesn't have to look exactly like the dungeons, but it would be nice if I can say, "Hey, Legacy, let's team up, and we'll hit the matchmaking. We'll take on some. We'll find another group that we can kind of go up against, and the match is going to last for 15 or 20 minutes, something like that at most, right? We know exactly how long we're going to be in there." Versus something like Dungeons where the time is a little bit unknown and, things can kind of drag on depending on the enemies that you fight and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's maybe not necessarily a critique of Dungeons at that point, but just kind of something that I'd still really like to see in this game that does allow me to play with a friend and kind of control the amount of time that's being spent with that, like in that game mode. Alright, next thing I want to talk about is the actual items in the dungeons themselves. The items, they're ridiculous, in my opinion. There's no other word that better describes it than just ridiculous. It's so expensive to get these items, these revives. Look at 365 units. For what? To revive your champions to get next to nothing for rewards? I mean, the potions, 320 units, and it heals 7,800 health for your champions. Like, that's not even enough. That's not even enough. We're going with like 565 champions that have like 35,000 life, and paying 320 units to restore 7,800 of that to the champions. Like, it's, and again, for what reason, right? There's no reason to actually spend those units in the dungeons. It's kind of a joke. What I would prefer to see is just remove the ability to even buy these potions. A better system, I feel, would be to go through a dungeon and you find some items along the way and you have those items temporarily for that dungeon run. After that dungeon run is over, poof, those items are gone. You don't have any dungeon items outside of whatever dungeon you're actually in. Or, you know, I mean, maybe there could be two sets. Maybe there could be a temporary items and kind of a more permanent items that you can carry through different runs of dungeons. But this system right here, this is not good. This is not good at all. I don't recommend anyone ever spend a single unit on any of these items. And yeah, I get that that's you know, part of how Kabam makes their money is that, you know, they have items like this available for units, and people are you know, spending money to get the units to get these items, and you know, I totally understand that. But do we need that in every area of the game? Can we have one game mode where you can't just buy these items, especially in dungeons? You can buy an infinite amount. There is no item cap in dungeons. So if somebody wants to, they can spend 10, 20,000 units in items real quick, you know, to heal up your champions to full. Like I said, you know, you need to spend over 1,000 units to heal up your champions to full just one time, right? And going through dungeons, going through some of these fights, you could spend that many times over. It's just something that I don't really like. It's something else that just kind of puts a bad taste in my mouth when thinking about the dungeons. So yeah, I would like to see some improvements made to the items as well. The last thing I want to touch on a little bit is the cooldowns. Recently, the cooldowns got changed. They became longer, just temporarily during this special event, so that we can't just, you know, farm these rewards over and over and over again with our best champions. I mean, number one, who in the right mind would even spend their time doing that? Because it's just not worth it. You're much better off just playing Arena or any other game mode for that matter. So who would actually want to run their champions more than once? And number two, I feel like the cooldowns could be improved. I think for the most part it's fine the way they are normally. But what I would like to see is when you're going through the matchmaking, you know, have kind of be a little bit more lenient on the players when going through matchmaking. When you don't know who you're playing with, and you could pair up somebody, you could throw in your best champions. You hit the matchmaking, find a partner button, and you find somebody that threw in kind of some of their crappiest champions. I know I don't think you can pair up with somebody with using like 1-star champions if you're using your 5 stars, your maxed out 5 stars. But still, you might find somebody who is using champions and they die in the first room or something like that. So I think that you know, if you're going through the matchmaking, the cooldown should be a bit shorter for your champions. You know, so that your 5 stars will be available instead of waiting like a couple of days for them to be available. Maybe they're available like the next day. Like they have the cooldown of a 4-star champion if you use a 5-star in the matchmaking, something like that. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. You know, overall, I really did enjoy my time playing in the dungeons with Legacy. You know, we had a lot of really interesting encounters. We were thinking about things a lot. We were actually just like we were fully focused on the game, right? We were in there for 90 minutes, and those 90 minutes, they flew by. It's a pretty satisfying experience overall, but we didn't get anything for it. And like I'm not the type of person that always needs to have that kind of reward for doing something. Like just playing the game in itself is pretty fun, you know? Those are the type of games that I grew up on, right? I mean, in the old school days of gaming, your reward was like points that mean nothing. You know, the reward was just like beating the game type of thing. You know, so I still have that kind of mentality when playing. Whereas like the actual gameplay is what matters the most, and the dungeon gameplay was really fun. But I also have to think like, man, in those 90 minutes, I could have, you know, played Arena, and I could have actually got something meaningful out of it, and there's not an infinite amount of time in the day, and I have to choose between one or the other, and if one reward is going to be better than the other, then I kind of have to go with that game mode that's going to give me that better reward. I can't really play dungeons. You know, it doesn't make it fun. So, that's my thoughts about dungeons. I really hope that Kabam makes some changes. You know, again, I think it's fun overall, but it's just a lot of things that need adjusting. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.